Back 4 minutes past the top of the hour, man. First of all, shout out to the WSU family and news anchor Darryl Forges. This series on youth violence, kind of one news station, kind of going back in the day, man, to hopefully being part of the solution.
Yeah, we need stations that are gonna bring people together to talk about important stuff.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that series on the 16th and 17th, as well as with news anchor Forges hopes it becomes a series on how do we begin to not only deal with the youth violence, but come up with solutions to deal with our kids. And, my next guest, I could talk to him about that and a whole lot of other stuff. I'm so proud in this studio to see young men like Darryl Forges and then Jay Wade as our next guest has developed a profession and a resume and a career around real estate, but he's also no stranger to this community. He was a little big head bad boy. Still big head. At one time, but also one of the most promising young real estate gurus in this town. Jay, welcome to the Good Morning Show, man.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Sanders for having me this morning.
And we all know his mama and family and mama and them.
That's right. Yeah, but no, thanks for being here. And today must be Strong Black Male Day. Got Darryl doing work.
How you like the brother's still relative, man?
So I know this. What's the first? Tell us a little bit more. Tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are, and then how you got into this real estate game and why.
My name is Jamar Waiters. My company is Title Doctors, and I just started that a couple of years ago. But before that, 8 years prior, I worked under Dreamality Real Estate Solutions. I kind of got into real estate organically, is what I would say. It kind of was, I think, just a message from God one night, sitting in the PICU with my son, and this commercial kept coming on, and I kept looking at it. I was going through issues.
It was talking to you.
It was talking to me.
The commercial was talking. God was talking.
After about the 13th or 14th day of seeing this infomercial, sitting in the PICU with my newborn son, I kind of started Googling things, and it organically led me into wondering, well, how can I get some financial freedom for myself and break away from, the day-to-day challenges I was having and just being in the, I would say, the normal corporate life.
Right.
And that's
working
kinda,
for somebody else.
I didn't want to say that because it's not, we all work for somebody, I guess, but basically it's to get away from that. And so I'm in about my 10th year so far, and doing this business has been good. I've been tremendously blessed.
But one of the things that you're noted for the people who deal with you, not just the individual real estate transactions that you make, and I think it comes from your family and community. You come from a family of service. You've been around giving back in this community since you were a young man, a little boy, an adolescent, to be honest with you. It's who your mother and your parents, or it's who your family is that you've developed an expertise specifically targeting the African American community and how we can not only can keep our property, but grow in terms of ownership to our property. Now, was that just intentional, or does that come from who Jamar Waiters is and how you were raised and what you have seen in terms of our culture and our community?
I would say it's absolutely intentional. I think the things that we're going to talk about today, I think every person in here and every person listening can somewhat relate to what's going on, and that's something that means it affects us all. So it's definitely intentional in my reasoning into getting into this specific niche of real estate. There's a lot that's maybe more lucrative. Right. There's a lot that maybe looks better on the outside looking in, but this is what I love. This is my passion. Yeah. And
helping black folk keep that and get property.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we've had a lot of people come in recently with reports with the census, with the data, with Urban League, with the Sea Change movement, and we've been talking about wealth generation. Yeah. And poverty at the same time in the black community, and the key in terms of ownership, assets, and of course real estate is, you can't get around the land, right? We need the land.
They ain't making no more.
They ain't making no more of it, right? Yeah. So, but at the same time, for many people, it is a mystery. it is, like, ooh, how do you do that? And a lot of people, are afraid even to get into ownership and everything and how to clean up their credit and all that stuff. But you specialize, even I say more specifically, and I know you talk about, for example, tax sales. Is that a good way to get into the property or real estate business?
I'm going to say that's a very subjective question.
Okay.
Right? For the most part, I advocate for, I'm usually adverse to a tax sale.
Okay.
Right? Because it affects our property owners in an adverse way. So a lot of times if you're an investor, tax sales may be great for you. You're on that side of the fence. If you are a property owner, you're on a different side of the fence, and that tax sale can affect you in a different way. So look, I have nothing against people who purchase tax sales. It's just not something that I have done too much of. I'm usually defending the property owners from the issues.
And so speak on that. So how can a person who's subject to that, who's had some downturns and
hold on
issues,
to this stuff?
Hold on to this. How do you do that?
Right. So I think the first step is to understand what is a tax sale. Right. If I could tell you how many times, if I had a nickel for every time I heard someone say, "Well, I lost my property already. I don't own it anymore."
Right.
And I have to say, well, yes, you do.
Right.
And because there's this misnomer that, when my property goes to a tax sale, I've lost it. And I think that is the first step, is to create a knowledge base and get this knowledge and information around to say, no, once your property goes to a tax sale, you have not lost it.
Great point.
You still own it. And even if it exceeds the 3-year redemptive period, which, we can talk about a little bit. I'm sure Mr. Thomas is very familiar with.
The redemption period is now 18 months. So it was
18
cut
months
from 3 years for blighted. Yeah,
18 months if it has a blight judgment. Now, that's very important. It has to have a blight judgment. But there was recently a case that just went to the Fourth Circuit that kind of causes issues with even that, where the Fourth Circuit stated that if a property goes to a tax sale, it's put back into commerce, and when the property is put back into commerce, that's the end of basically it being adjudicated blighted. Right?
Okay.
That's and I don't want to get too deep into that.
No, this is one of the most important for our listening audience out there. This is one of the most important discussions about generational wealth and property ownership that we can have with one of our leading experts, a young man, Jamar J. Waiters. You want to listen, you want to call in at some point. Continue, go ahead.
Sure. So like I was saying, the first step is you did not lose your property, Miss Betty. Okay, you still own it, and even if it goes outside of that, like Mr. Thomas said, 18-month redemption period or 36-month redemption period, you still own your property, and I think that's the first step, is making residents understand that. And once it does go outside the 3-year redemptive period, the tax sale purchaser has to go through a process to obtain ownership of that property. You have to go to the courts and file a suit to acquire title. And that involves a lot of steps that sometimes goes right and sometimes does not.
The rights of the original property owner protected to the nth degree in Louisiana, more so than most other states in this union.
Absolutely so. And it seems like the courts are more so leveraged towards us, and I wish more of us knew that.
Right.
We don't want to give away property based on tax sales, but now I'm kind of getting into the weeds on this. But a lot of times when these suits are filed against these tax sale purchases, this is something I do want to talk about.
Okay.
Is we don't get notice. We don't. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution is very simple. We don't get our due process, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the tricks that go on at 421 Loyola Street is a major reason that deprives of us of our.
Say that again. A lot of the tricks.
And for those who don't know that address, that is the civil
court. That's the civil district court.
Civil court.
And this is not anything having to do with the judges. This is what I'm saying is, a lot of the attorneys, they know these tricks, and we don't. Right. And some of the tricks are filing a lawsuit, and, it's very simple to, find the address on someone and serve them. But it serves me, if I'm a tax sale purchaser, a lot more to just not serve them and appoint a curator and let the curator do their responsibilities in doing their best job to attempt to locate a property owner, in which, let's just be honest here, most of the times they will not and that tax sale purchaser will get a judgment to own that property with little knowledge to the property owner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is a major issue of some of the things that goes on with tax sales, Dr. Sanders. And
I know, and so you work with attorneys and others in real estate, other real estate professionals to help clients then know what steps to take in order to address those kinds of issues.
Absolutely. A lot of my clients are residents. I have clients that are attorneys. I have clients that are brokers. I have clients that are real estate agents. You know, a lot of these different individuals I help in different ways to resolve issues of immovable property.
Okay. Now, so then what about adjudicated property? I know we kind of talked about that a little bit. So if your property has been adjudicated and there's something about this soap auctions, what is that?
So soap sales.
Soap sales.
For all intended purposes, a soap sale is really no different than a tax sale, right?
Okay.
For all intended purposes, right? The difference is this is adjudicated, meaning the city of New Orleans, in essence, bought the tax sale, right? Just let's look at it like that. What are the upsides of an adjudication to a property owner? The biggest one is that there is no redemptive period per se, right?
Okay.
And please let me give this disclaimer: I am not an attorney. I cannot give legal advice.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to get that.
But he understands the real estate process.
Yes. So please, I am not an attorney. But the soap auction, for all intended purposes, is just a tax sale that's purchased by the city of New Orleans, and the 3-year redemptive period, which a lot of our residents don't know, it does not apply. I see a lot of times they say, "My property been adjudicated. I don't own it anymore." Ms. Betty, yes, you do.
Yeah.
And you don't know, you still own it.
Yeah.
And so whether it's 5, 10, 15 years down the line, a resident can still go to the Treasury Department for the city of New Orleans and get a payoff and pay off what's owed on an adjudication. Now, the issue with an adjudication becomes when it's eligible to go to the soap auction.
Okay.
And these are done once
And
a
let folk
month.
know what the soap auction means.
Sale of adjudicated property.
Okay.
And this is done once a month through Civic Source. Or is it? Yeah, I believe it's once a month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's once a month. And
Used to be on the first floor of Civil
District Court. Yeah.
now it's online.
Right.
Okay.
And this is where the property is sold, the entire property. So see, in the tax sale, we talked about that. That's the taxes being sold, and they have to go to court to acquire title, the tax sale purchaser.
Okay.
But a soap sale, there is no court process. The city does not go file a lawsuit against the property owner. That property is, in essence, seized and sold, and the property owner gets notice through, mail or through newspaper advertisement, right? And after 5 years of the adjudication being recorded, that is when it allows the city to send that resident's property to a sale for it to be sold 100%, right?
Okay.
And it's interesting because I'm learning something now, and I'm sure Dr. Sanders and our audience is too. I ain't know my stuff could be 50% sold, 60% sold, 70% sold, 90% sold. And that's the importance of this conversation, because long as I got any percentage of ownership, that redemptive period, and there's a process that gives me the right to challenge ownership and get my property back.
If we got notice.
If we have notice.
Wow.
If you know about it.
Yeah, if you know about it. Right. But now, what are the remedies for that, though? I mean, if you've been living at the same property for the last 25 years and you didn't get served, how can they say they couldn't find you?
Well, that's where the curator comes in at, and I think that's the law's way of saying let's do our due diligence. And I think today, let me just say this: there's many people. I have personally been, recently. There's a property that I own that's currently involved in some litigation, and I received some mail from the adverse party making me an offer on the property, right, to my residence. When the lawsuit was filed, they attempted to serve me somewhere in a different city in the state of Louisiana. I cannot make this up.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's
the
issue.
They found you when they wanted to find you. Yeah.
Right. But to get to the heart of what you're asking is like, how do we defend against this, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of issues with tax sales procedurally that we need to talk about that, allows our residents to not lose their property. A lot of times it has to do with notice. A lot of times it has to do with the way that tax sale was done prior to the tax sale even being sent to the property being sent to a tax sale. The pre-tax sale mail notice is what we're referring to, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times things like that were not done properly it doesn't matter at what point the tax sale is at. They could be in court about to get a judgment, but that tax sale can be nullified based on those procedural defects. And that's probably one of the strongest way to get rid of a tax sale.
Ronald Coleman, the NAACP president, has been trying to highlight this issue for years about what happens through the policy, through the civil court and legislatively, especially with black folks and adjudicated property. So, man, we're making some sense out of this right now. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about adjudicated property, court enforcement, successions, and all of those things with one of our local experts. Guys, when we talk about generational wealth, our social standing in the community, our relationship to the land and home ownership, it may not be number one, but it's definitely 1A or 1B. Jamal Waiters after the break.
That's right. It's a winter wonderland Saturday, December 3rd at Joe Brown Park. Join the Friends of Joe Brown Park and Nord from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. for holiday festivities that include a gingerbread workshop, train rides, entertainment, a toy giveaway, food, drinks, and a whole lot more. If you would like to give away a toy, call 504-427-2596. And happy holidays to you and your family here at WBOK, the station you listen to all day long.
Back 26 minutes past the top of the hour, one of the most important discussions that we can have in our community, man. And in a city where home ownership, especially in the African American community, used to mean something, from Treme to Pontchartrain Park to the Lower Ninth Ward, which had some of the highest concentrations of African American home ownership in this country, to now a city that teeters around 40%.
That's right.
Or even less when you talk about the black community. Jay Waiters, man, is educating us to the T.
That's right. And, we've been talking about tax sales and adjudicated property, but let's get, there's so much that, we need to have you back already.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe this needs to be a continuing segment because I think the real estate opportunity is so important. Maybe you and your company will agree. Maybe quarterly come on and talk to us if you can do it. But we think that's important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in the black community, first, the issue of, with preventing tax sales in terms of help, how do we get people help so that they can pay their taxes and avoid getting involved in this roller coaster ride. And then we also know, but Katrina exposed it greatly, if not even before, the lack of, of contested title because of lack of probate, succession. Talk about those issues and solutions.
And we got a caller when you finish.
Okay, great. You just hit it on the head, Dr. Sanders. One of the largest issues that I could say that leads to properties getting to the point of delinquent property taxes and going to tax sales has to do with probate, the estate, the succession, right? And the lack of knowledge in that area. And the fact that I want as many of our listeners to know that a lot of it is not our fault. I was just reading something yesterday about it being the anniversary of the day that Ruby Bridges went to and integrated the elementary
frame.
She's still alive and well.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's not too long ago that we did not own property. We had no reason to open succession. We had no reason to do probate. We had nothing to pass down, right? And so I think it's today we're realizing the consequences of that lack of knowledge in that area. And so when you have a property that's, let's say, owned by grandma, she passes, she has 5 kids, she didn't have a will, right? And we have an immovable property sitting there. It's very seldom is going to work out, right?
Yes.
You're going to have somebody. We have that relative that say, look, if you fix the house up, I'm living in there. You paying rent? No, right? And you have the family member that's going to take care of the taxes. But at some point, they're going to get exhausted with paying that because they have a 20% ownership and they're not reaping the benefits of that, right? So my question is this. If we have a piece of immovable property with no mortgage on it, free and clear, that especially based on what's going on in the communities in the city now, may be valued as is, even in a deplorable condition, at $150,000, right? Why is it so hard for an administrator for someone to open up succession, become the administrator of that estate and go to a bank to get some type of loan that may assist me in fixing up my property? The bank is secure.
Breaking news. Breaking news right here. Say that again.
The bank
Breaking news.
The bank is secure, just like they are, and make sure that they have to be.
It has something of value as collateral.
That's
exactly.
Right.
And
that's the solution there.
So if we could give, thank you, if we could find ways, and I was just having a sidebar conversation with a gentleman outside before coming in to do the show. It's if you think about it, immovable property is the only asset that you will ever see someone complain about when the value goes up.
Wow. Let's go to the line. Man, I hope some of our lending institutions are out there listening. That is a solution. Breaking news right here on the Good Morning Show. Reverend Calhoun, you're on with Jay Waiters.
Good morning to all. All right, I got a question, so I need to know. If the property is valued at less than $125,000, do you need to do a succession? One. Number two, the adjudication process. There's been a piece of property next door to my mother's house that was adjudicated in 1979. I'm not aware, and I've been trying to file it for the last 20, 30 years just to see when does it go to the soap sale or whatever sale it needs to go to. So, Oliver, maybe you can help me and understand what is the process to get a piece of property to a soap sale or get it to a point where the community or somebody in the community can purchase that property. Third thing I said too, but third thing is, how much are these properties being bought up in the lower nine now?
Well, first of all, the Wesley Bishop bill that passed in New Orleans but failed statewide would have been a solution, especially for people who have generational relationships with the land, live next to the property. Of course, former Senator Bishop works with me. We're going to revisit that at the legislature with the governor and legislative leadership again. That would be a solution. The other process, Jay, I think has to come through the adjudicated or blighted process.
Yeah, to answer the first question, I believe he had on the property value under 125.
Right.
Again, I'm going to have to give the disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. I cannot give legal advice.
Right.
But what I will say is this. $125,000 is the threshold for what's considered a small succession.
Great question, Reverend Kelly.
Okay? So if it's under 125, you do not have to go through the courts to file succession. The benefit is you can now go through land records and file what's called an affidavit of small succession, which tremendously helps our residents because it may, as opposed to a succession, which may cost them $2,000, $2,500.
Right.
An affidavit of small succession may cost you $125. And
last thing then. Now, I got my, like you said, you got an empty lot sitting on a corner, 25 by 120, and now the family comes in and they want $40,000 for that little lot. Is there an affidavit I can use to just say that they have given all that property over to me?
I need you to be a little more specific.
It's already been adjudicated. So can I just go in now, because the value is under $125,000, if I get legal clearance from all of my siblings, can I just now go in and do the affidavit to own the property?
You're saying that this is a property that you and your family own?
It's been cleared. Everybody signed it over to you,
right.
Correct?
Right. Just yeah.
Do you have title?
Signed willing to give the property over. Ain't no more, we want $50 million for a piece of property. Mm-hmm. So can I now just get an affidavit stating that they have
from each individual
over to me?
Yeah. So what I'll say is this: the affidavit of small succession affects. It gives the same effect as a petition for possession that's filed into the civil district court if it's immovable property valued under $125,000. Right.
Okay.
So let's say it's you and 4 siblings, and let's say it was owned by your mother, and let's say there was possibly a small succession done on your mother, and it was in that small succession you and your 4 siblings were named. Once that small succession is filed in the land records for the city of New Orleans, then at that point you and your 4 siblings are in title. See what I'm saying? So at that point, yes, they can transfer their interest to you via active donation or via quick claim or a sale if you want to do it that way. And even if the affidavit of small succession was not done, they still can transfer their interest to you via quick claim.
Wow. We getting questions and answers.
This is good stuff. Reverend Calhoun, thank you, man.
That's
as always. That's the mayor of the little ninth ward, y'all.
That's right.
James, and man, James was so excellent yesterday on Gerard's show, listening to him. James, you're on with Jay Waiters. James? Hello, James?
Got to get him back.
Man, you're talking about good stuff.
Yeah,
but hold on a second, man. So you're breaking all of this stuff down. It makes sense. It's a lot easier than what we know. Why don't we, and even me as a former policymaker in Letcher who dealt with the redemption period, who understands tax sales and blighted sales, the intricacies, why aren't there more lawyers or real estate experts teaching us what you're teaching us now?
I don't think it's intentional at all.
Okay.
I think it's kind of hitting on kind of what we hit on earlier about us not having a lot of knowledge about the probate process and why a lot of that is not our fault. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, when you graduate from law school, you're not coming out as an expert in any field, right? From what I understand, right. And
so you're ready to practice. That's what. It's like the doctor,
practicing attorney and practicing medicine, right? They practice it.
So I think that has a lot to do with it, and just our culture,
right?
And bringing back the Ruby Bridges situation again. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
it wasn't that long ago. We could not even own.
That's right.
Wow, the lines are lit up. We could go back to James.
Even own property.
James, man, good morning, good brother. Mm-hmm. James, hello, James. We keep losing James. We're going to go to West Bank Mac. West Bank Mac, God bless you, man. You're on with Jay Waiters.
Thank you so much. Good morning, gentlemen. I have an assistant that I work with, and she's been crying and not sleeping, thinking she's lost her land to a tax sale in Slidell. What should she do, and how do we get in touch with you?
Great point.
Sure. To answer your first question, which I just want to make sure I understand you. You're saying that she believes she lost her property in the tax sale.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir. What happened, she skipped paying maybe 1 year in between 2 or 3, and somebody paid that year, and she's under the assumption that they're trying to take her land.
Okay, so the first thing that I would do in that situation is go over to the mortgage and conveyance office for the parish, right? And I'm gonna tell you why I'm saying that. Some people might say, well, go down to the city hall or go down to the assessor's office to find out. A lot of times, those people are mistaken sometimes in telling you whether you own your property or not, and we believe that, and we take that to the bank.
I've seen that happen before where they will call the recorder of mortgages and find out, what someone thinks their property is lost and it's not.
And the person that works at the city may also think that their property is lost and it's not. Right. And so it's the blind kind of leading the blind at that point. I would say go to the land records or the mortgage and conveyance office for the parish and ask them for the most recent act of sale, the most recent transaction having to do with the transfer of the property and who's entitled at this point, and ask for a copy of whatever document that is showing the most recent transfer of the property.
And what's the number for your company they can call?
Sure. 504-430-3234. And that's Title Doctors. We're located at 400 Porter Street, Suite 900. And we also can be reached by email at the letter J, the letter W, at thetitlemd.com. That's THETITLEMD.com.
Thank you. Giving out the information today.
Thank you, West Bank. God bless you, man.
Thank y'all so much.
Absolutely. Line 3, Miss Gail. Lines are lit up. Man, I knew, man, we are dealing with this so much in our community, Dr. Sanders. Miss Gail, you are on with Jay Waiters.
Good morning. Good morning. Such an interesting topic. My daughter purchased a lot next door. The owner, we knew from the beginning of time, has been dead over 17 years, since before Katrina. She purchased a lot next door. We've been paying the taxes 6 years. It was sold by Civic Source, which is a city agency. The titles are not clear. Why are they allowed to sell property and the titles are not clear? I have to find a real estate lawyer, which is difficult, get a writ of possession, and wait for a judge to sign the paperwork.
Wow. And that's why Jay Waiters is here today.
Sell property that's the titles are not clear.
Wow. Thank you, Miss Gail. Listen, he's going to address that, and God bless you, Miss Gail.
So, Miss Gail, I'm going to.
Her daughter believes she's paid to have title or rights to this property.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask this: How did your daughter acquire the property? Because I heard Ms. Gail say a writ of possession that usually applies to tax sale purchasers. Right. So if Ms. Gail, if your daughter bought the property via a tax sale, that would affect, I guess, the way I would address that. Or did she acquire the property via an act of sale or a quitclaim or that way? So that would, depending on the way that it was acquired.
Well, it's a vacant or blighted lot. I know that area there. And so the daughter probably purchased the property to protect the mother's home in terms of the ability to control or maintain that site.
So I'm going to just give you my opinion on what I think happened there. If she says she has to get a writ of possession, then it's more than likely the daughter bought it through a tax sale. If she bought it through a tax sale, a lot of times prior to the tax sale, you'll have adjudications that's been sitting on the property for, could be 10, 15 years, right? So now you have an adjudication. You have an adjudication from 1992, right? And it went to a tax sale in 2021, right? Yeah. So you bought the tax sale, but now the city is going to usurp you and say, look, well, I know you bought the tax sale recently, but we have the adjudication from 20 years ago, and we're going to send this to Civic Source auction. And what I really want everyone to know, and what I really think is very unfair to the residents in regards to the soap sales, which is the Civic Source auctions we're referring to, is that everything above and beyond what is owed in taxes and the costs for sending it to the soap sale, it goes to the city of New Orleans. So let me explain that. Yeah. Right? Yes. That means that if the city adjudicated a lot that may be valued at, which is going to say $50,000, it was $5,000 in taxes that was paid by the city. Right. They recorded the adjudication. 5 years has passed. Now the city says we're going to send this to a soap auction because it's eligible for a soap sale at this point. The city sells it. It sells for $42,000. What was owed was $11,000. Right. That means that $31,000 just went to the coffers of the city of New Orleans. This money does not go back to the residents.
Wow.
And you have to ask yourself, well, if I'm that department of the city, am I more so wanting to
Right.
send properties to soap sales?
Yeah.
Right.
Or am I less so wanting to
Well,
send
Ms. Gill wants
properties
your
to soap sales?
phone number.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, give that number out one more time.
504.
Sure, 504-430-3234.
Now, I know we're winding up about another 10 more minutes or so, but talk about our community's issues and how we deal with code enforcement. Is it true that some of us just don't show up to the hearing?
Some of us just don't show up to the hearing, Dr. Sand. And sometimes we don't get notice.
Here we go again.
Don't get notice.
Can we hit the ding?
I need to set up a new company just to make sure notice is given.
Remember, consistently throughout this process, especially for city officials, and I'm going to remember this in terms of what we do daily, you've consistently mentioned citizens not getting noticed. We got Anthony. Anthony, God bless you. Good morning. You're on with Jay Waiters and Title Doctors.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good morning, Mr. Anthony.
Look, I had my grandparents. They were business owners, right? They had apartment complexes, bulldozer business, several houses, right? Well, when they passed, right, they had two sons. Now, the one son was my father. The other son was the older brother, which was my cousin and them daddy, right? Now, when they passed, them two brothers split up everything. But my uncle, the oldest, took my grandparents' house when they split it up, right? Now, everything done been sold, and my uncle and my daddy done passed on. But from my uncle, my grandmother and them house, from what I understand, went to one of my first cousins, right? So this is the last house or piece of property that they have. I tried to buy it from my cousin for $30,000. She wouldn't sell it to me, and she sold it to some first boyfriend she had for $25,000, right?
Ooh.
But my problem is, how do I find out that how these pieces of property have been transferred? Because when I went to go find out, they're going to charge me an arm and a leg to open succession, and no one wants to open the books or the records to show me how they got their hands on all these different pieces of property. Because I'm thinking the grandkids should have something to do with all of these pieces of property that's been transferred. And now the only one, my grandmother, last house that they was living in, my first cousin done sold that, right? And I'm very offended about that. And I need to know how I find out how did that piece of property get in her hands, even though she said it came from my uncle, right? I like to know legally did these papers go right?
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
He just hit on a great.
That's commonplace, especially in terms of the black community. What he just explained.
Great point. A great question.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. The reason I said that's a great question is because...
And you wrote a chart based on how he was explaining
this. Yeah, because I need to know like where he was at in the chain.
Right.
And so what I would say is... What I would say is how do you find out what's going on with immovable property that you own or believe you have a ownership interest in? And that's the greatest point of this question is we have to start learning and teaching ourselves how to do these things. These are... what I would say requirements.
It's all public records.
Right? Yeah, it's requirements that I think every child should know how to go and look up their property, right? Or every one of us should know how to go and look up our property. So what I would say to that question is, the first place you want to go look at is, if it was your grandmother's property, there's no way it can be transferred without some sort of I would
notice
probate, right, some sort of probate, right, in order for someone to have been sold it to someone else, right. So the first place I would look is you can go to the Civil District Court at 421 Loyola, and they have on the 4th floor the computers where you can go in and do a search, and you can search the name of your grandmother to see if probate or succession has ever been opened, right. and if it
Great
has
information.
yeah, and if it has
Fourth floor civil
fourth
court.
floor civil district court, 421 Loyola. Mr. Perry is the man over there, and he'll take care of you, and Mr. David and all of those.
But now the mortgage and conveyance office you mentioned earlier for all liens, is that on Poydras where's that office
across
now?
the street? I
across from City Hall.
1340 Poydras.
13.
Don't
Okay.
quote me on that, but I believe it's
but
1340.
the Benson
Poydras.
building, correct?
Or
no?
right
Oh, no, you're
before-
saying no.
The same building where the Department of Child and Family Services.
I got you.
is.
Okay.
It's
All
not
right.
the Benson building.
Okay, no.
Yeah, I believe that's 1340. If I'm not
Another
mistaken.
question is, Civic Source was allowed to come in the last administration. Legally, how did they get the right to do what they're doing, especially when you talk about adjudicated and sale of property? Is their work legal, and how did they get that? I think they came into the Landry administration. How do they have the right to play the role that they're playing?
I don't. This is the reason I don't want to speak too much on that, because I'm not 100%
Right.
familiar with how they got the contract.
Right.
Whether it was a professional services contract,
Right.
was it a competitive bid
Right.
contract? I don't.
No.
I don't know. What I do know is the owners of Civic Source. They are local.
They are local.
and have to do and are players in the real estate industry, and that's the most that I could kind of say about that without getting into things that I may be
liable for,
or
incorrect,
assuming, or don't have firsthand knowledge.
Okay,
right, but that's a good question, Mr. Thomas. Is how did they get the contract?
Right,
and does it go out for bid every 3 or 4 years? And
well, we're gonna find out.
I think I know somebody who can find out.
We're gonna find out.
Yes, that's a good question.
So but go back to code enforcement just briefly about that again. How should we handle if your property has a lien on it from code enforcement going to the hearing? Just talk a little bit about that as we get ready to close.
Sure, and just for residents that are listening that may not know, the Department of Code Enforcement, that's the department that I'm sure Mr. Thomas and Dr. Sanders well aware of, or I guess tasked with making sure property is in code, right? Making sure that your house is not 33 stories tall on a normal city block, for example, right?
Right.
So sometimes these Department of Code Enforcement, they'll put they'll come by and they'll cite your property for something that may not be in code, and that's not the end all be all, right? There has to have a hearing, right? So what they'll do is they'll set a hearing date, and they're allegedly supposed to send this notice out to the resident, and the resident can come in to state whatever their issues are, or what's going on, or why it's like that, or maybe they fixed it before the hearing and they could bring evidence of that.
Yeah.
The issue with the code enforcement, as I see it, is it takes precedence over property taxes, which is something I don't think is good for the residents of this city and has never been, right? And what I mean by that is if Ms. Gloria goes to a code enforcement hearing, something's not in code, she owes 0 property taxes, right?
Right.
Well, the Department of Code Enforcement says, well, I don't know, you had a window that wasn't boarded up.
Because of this violation.
Because of this violation, we're going to go ahead and slap you with a $3,550 fine. And once that goes onto the property,
great stuff.
Every penny that is paid goes first to the code enforcement lien. So if your taxes are $123 due to age free,
you don't get to your taxes until you deal with
not till you pay off that $3,350 code enforcement.
Man, we don't have. Would you talk to your company and our producer and maybe think about quarterly?
Absolutely, I would love to.
Please. I want to go to something you said earlier. I think it's important, especially in terms of the mindset. We're one of the few communities that in many cases we think it's a bad thing when our property value goes up. In terms of generational wealth, in the real world, it's really not. Address that before, as you close, and give people your number and website again.
Sure.
Why are we mad when our property value goes up?
I'm glad you touched on that because I meant to kind of clarify what I meant.
Okay.
Before we went to break, when I said the only asset that we have a problem with when it goes up in value is immovable property. Right? And I say that I understand that it does cause problems for some due to rising values,
Right.
rising property taxes, right? But I think we have to start looking at it as it's a cost of doing business almost. It's right. If my property value has went up $150,000, I think there's a lot more good in that than there is in me to complain about the fact that my property taxes went up. Right. And I just think we have to start catering more to capitalizing off of the benefits that comes with the increase in property values in our neighborhood. And I think the frustration is we have no one that can help us to do that. Right. And it's not fair.
Well, we got it now. Title Doctors, your number and
sure.
And, website again.
Yeah, Title Doctors. Like I said, our number is 504-430-3234. We can be reached by email at jw@thetitlemd.com, Instagram at thetitlemd, Twitter at thetitlemd.
Ooh. Wow. Well, ready for round 2 and the next
No
quarter. That's right.
It,
well, a great show. After the break, there's going to be the front porch. Stay tuned. And, of course, our own councilman, Oliver Thomas, is presenting his senior citizens Thanksgiving luncheon
right.
tomorrow at 11 a.m. at the Pete Sanchez Center on 1616 Fats Domino Avenue. Come on out. Gerard Stevens, our own, will be the MC.
Yeah.
And you can volunteer and be a blessing to somebody.
Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned who's hosting it, though. they didn't do that yesterday either.
They didn't do that?
No. So it does matter.
I take care of business.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing that for years, man.
Yeah.
The only sad thing is my mother can't participate anymore, but we'll be at the Sanchez Center. It's a blessing, man. God, thank you, Jay Waiters, man. Yes. Looking forward to you coming back.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That's right.
WBOK,
12:30 a.m. The station you listen to all day long.